So when you combine real numbers with imaginary numbers, it's called a complex number. And we normally, the standard way to write a complex number is to put the real part in front. It will need to be separated by either a positive or a negative sign, depending on the sign of the imaginary part, and then the imaginary part goes second. So this is an example: 5 plus 2i. 5 is the real part. The 2i is the imaginary part. And the imaginary part could be either plus or negative. So could the imaginary part. The imaginary part might be negative as well. And then that's how you write it. We can combine numbers by either adding or subtracting them, and they work very much like terms, combining like terms. Since this is a plus sign right here, we're simply going to combine the real parts, and that means put the negative 11 together with the positive 9. A negative 11 and a positive 9 combined together to give you negative 2. We're going to simply combine the imaginary parts. I have a positive 3i and a positive 2i that combines together to give me a positive 5i. Since we're combining, which means either adding or subtracting, we don't change the exponent on here. It just stays a 5. Same thing is true here. I've got 4 and 7 combined to make 11, a positive 1 and a negative 5 combined together to make a negative 4. So the final answer here is 11 minus 4i. If we subtract, there's a subtraction sign right there. Don't forget to distribute that negative. So the real part becomes negative 2. The imaginary part becomes a negative 6i. Then you go back and put the real parts together. A positive 7 and a negative 2 combined to make 5. A negative 2 and a negative 6 combined together to make a negative 8i. Doesn't matter if we have several right here. We have a 6i. We need to distribute that negative, so that becomes negative 14. A negative 1 right here times that negative I makes that I positive. And then we don't have a negative sign to distribute, so the 5 stays positive, 3 stays negative. So negative I, negative 6i, positive I, and negative 3i. Those all need to go together. A negative 6 and a negative 3, that makes negative 9. Negative 9 and a positive 1 that combines together give me negative 8. Then I'm going to combine the real parts, the negative 14 and the positive 5 that goes together make a negative 9. I put it in front because that's the way the standard form of a complex number is written. The real part in front, the imaginary part behind. When you multiply, you just same thing as when we're multiplying with x's. If you just think of that I down here is behaving the same way it would if it was an x. If you were just going to take this 2i and we're going to multiply it times the 8, we're going to take the 2i and we're going to multiply it times the negative 3i. 2i times 8 gives me 16i. 2i times negative 3i gives me a negative 6i squared. From the other paper that we did previously, we learned that I squared is always replaced with a negative 1. So now we have 16i minus 6 times a negative 1. The negative 6 times a negative 1 becomes a positive 6. That's now the real part, so it's going to go in the front, and the 16i goes in the end. Negative I times a negative 2 is a positive 2i. Negative I times a positive 10i is a negative 10i squared. Change the I squared to a negative 1. And then the negative 1 times a negative 10 becomes a positive 10. Since that's the real part, it goes in the front. The 2i goes in the back. And these are some extra examples that you can work. But these are all of the examples that we worked in class.